was a heroic moment. They knew history was in the making. And I think that Rebel News helped to set Canada free. You know, there's that old Zen saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear, does it make a sound? Well, if you have a trucker convoy, if you have people standing up for freedom, but the only reports of it are filtered through the haters in the media party and the propagandists at the CBC who claim that these are foreign-funded, Vladimir Putin-organized bad actors with disinformation. My point is you could have had a wonderful trucker convoy, but if the coverage of it had been directed by Trudeau and his henchmen, it would have been a very different outcome than if there were citizen journalists, largely from Rebel News. There were a couple of others there too. I'll give credit to people like Andrew Lawton and Rupa Subramania and Viva Fry, to name a few. But Rebel News dominated the coverage, as you know. In the month of February, we had 400 million views and impressions of our Rebel News stories, more than in the entire previous year combined. You've heard me tell you that statistic before. It was a year's worth of eyeballs in 1 month, and the reason is we were telling the truth about the freedom movement, and they won. They won. The fever broke. People realized that not everyone was in support of things. Now we're back to freedom. Here we are in December 2022. How did it happen? Well, it happened because of the truckers. It was an organic, grassroots, populist uprising. The elites did not help us. They were all in lockstep together. Conservatives are taking back their parties, at least in the province of Alberta, and federally, not yet in Ontario, though I hope that comes. Rebel News had a role in all of these things. We also, if you recall, created the Democracy Fund in 2021, and it really found its stride in 2022. Right now, the Democracy Fund has 8 legal staff, 4 lawyers and 4 paralegals. Just a reminder, the Democracy Fund came out of an idea that Rebel News started called Fight the Fines, when we helped ordinary people fight tickets and charges and even criminal cases. Our very first client was Arthur Pavlovsky, the Christian pastor from Calgary. That was client number 1. There are now more than 2,100 cases across Canada, and it grew to be such a big project, we spun it off. It's no longer run by Rebel News, but rather by an independent CRA-compliant charity with its own board of directors, its own staff, its own budget. It's frankly one of the greatest things I've ever been involved with. Of course, I'm a volunteer over there. I work at the Rebel News side. The Democracy Fund didn't just help 2,100 people, including spectacular cases like Arthur Pavlovsky's. It received intervener status in various courts of law, both in Windsor, for example, in one of the trucker cases, and at the Emergencies Act inquiry in Ottawa. Of course, Rebel News covered that inquiry very intensively with our pop-up studio, Airbnb, in the city of Ottawa, where we were for more than a month, giving intensive day-by-day coverage. In 2022, Rebel News doubled in size. It settled in at around 50 staff. That's pretty big. And the team was forged in the battle, that feeling of solidarity for working on the streets of Ottawa in the biting cold for 23 days in a row, even those awful moments when our staff was attacked physically, in a way that forged a team of principled nonconformists. What do I mean by that? I think the number one characteristic for becoming a rebel is not, did you get a journalism degree, or even do you have a certain ideology, is are you willing to tell the other side of the story, even if the whole world is shouting at you to comply with them? Can you have enough confidence in yourself and your conscience to know that you may be right, even if the whole world tells you you're wrong? It's like Kipling said in his famous poem, If, can you keep your mind while those around you are losing theirs? That's 2022. What's 2023 looking like? It's just a week or so away. Well, it's always tough to predict, but I think that there is trouble on the horizon. I think the same forces of authoritarianism that were on the march with the lockdowns and then with the Emergencies Act, I think they're coming back. Why wouldn't they? They were vindicated in their own minds. I think that the Alberta election will be an early test of freedom. I am worried. I'm genuinely worried that Rachel Notley, the NDP premier who so devastated that province, that she'll be back. And I think that Danielle Smith, who I interviewed just this week, I think she has a lot of strong suits and she's a good communicator, but I am worried that Rachel Notley and more importantly, the media party want to dethrone Smith, and they just might. I think it's possible that we have another federal election in 2023. Remember, we had one in 2019 and then one in 2021. So why wouldn't there be one in 2023? And Justin Trudeau could engineer it. Of course, Jagmeet Singh of the NDP doesn't want one, but it may be in Trudeau's interest to do so. I think there's going to be a possible federal election. And the media party, which is the most powerful political party in the country, well, they are worse than ever. I mean, just remember the other week, there was this media party conference in Ottawa where reporters were calling for police to silence their online critics. Here's Rachel Gilmore and other media party insiders demanding that the cops arrest people who do mean tweets to them.
We're not in a position to protect our journalists from this hate. And that's why I think the conversation has to be a bigger conversation. It has to be something that's talked about at a policy level, at a law enforcement level. We don't have the tools to actually, go after these people.
It was gross how the public safety minister was there nodding along the whole time. Of course, that's just individual journalists wanting their personal enemies silenced, but Justin Trudeau has several censorship bills marching through Parliament very quickly that will certainly become law in 2023. Censorship bills so bad that Facebook is even talking about turning off its news department, stopping all news stories because the rules that Trudeau is foisting on them are so onerous. Twitter has said that the rules that Trudeau is contemplating are the kind of rules that you would expect to see in North Korea. And that's what Twitter said even before Elon Musk bought the company. I think that censorship is going to be the big battle of 2023. And remember what I said about Rebel News covering the trucker convoy with 400 million views and impressions. If you were Justin Trudeau and you already control 99% of the newspapers, radio stations, TV companies, and the digital news sites, the one or two that you don't control, that's all you see. You can't get them out of your mind because, it's like having a dam with a single hole in it. The hole is all you think about. And if there is a hole in the dam, the water gets through. And that's my point. As long as there is one media company in Canada that is telling the truth, you can have all the TV stations and the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star telling the Trudeau line as if there's an alternative. So Trudeau wants to snuff out those handful of independent journalists left. And we are the biggest and the most influential of the independent journalists. He is coming to kill us. That's an excerpt from my show every night. It's called The Ezra Levant Show. That's me, Ezra Levant. You can see the whole thing behind our paywall. Well, there's a lot of goodies behind there. I do a show every weeknight. My friends Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies and Nat and Kat have their shows too. You get a ton of content for just $8 a month. There's so much in there you won't find anywhere else. Go to rebelnewsplus.com.